It's 5:04 and welcome into a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We start off with some statewide news this morning as new North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson has joined Democrats serving as AG in 17 other states alongside the District of Columbia in a new federal lawsuit challenging President Donald Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. The suit, which was filed in a Massachusetts federal court, also has support from the San Francisco city attorney. A separate federal suit brings the total number of states challenging Trump's order to 22 states in total, all of them with Democrat attorney generals. The suit reads as follows. Plaintiffs bring this action to protest their state, localities, and residents from the president's flagrantly unlawful attempt to strip hundreds of thousands of American-born children of their citizenship based on their parentage. According to the suit, Laura Howard, Jackson's Chief Deputy Attorney General, and Associate Deputy Attorney General Daniel Mulster are listed among the lawyers supported in the suit. The other states participating in the complaint are California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin. Those are all in the same suit as North Carolina. However, there is a separate lawsuit that features Arizona, Illinois, Oregon, and Washington as their plaintiffs. So we'll see if those two cases end up being combined. The complaint endorsed by Jackson's office says the principle of birthright citizenship has been enshrined in the Constitution for more than 150 years. The citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment unambiguously and expressly confers citizenship on, quote, all persons born in and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, end quote. More than 125 years ago, the Supreme Court confirmed that this entitles a child born in the United States to non-citizen parents automatic citizenship. The lawsuit continued by saying Congress subsequently codified that understanding in the Immigration and Nationality Act, as well as the executive branch has long recognized that any attempt to deny citizenship to a child based on their parent's citizenship or immigration status would be unquestionably unconstitutional, the lawsuit claims. It goes on to say President Trump now seeks to get rid of this well-established and long-standing constitutional principle by executive fiat. Just hours after taking office, he signed an executive order titled Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship, which the lawsuit declares that birthright citizenship does not extend to any child born in the United States to a mother who is unlawfully present or lawfully present on a temporary basis, and a father who is neither a U.S. citizen nor a lawful permanent resident. On the basis of this unlawful declaration, the president prescribes that the federal government shall not issue or recognize any document recognizing citizenship for any such child born after February 19th, 2025, the Democratic AGs wrote. The president has no authority to rewrite or nullify a constitutional amendment or duly enacted statute, nor is he empowered by any other source of law to limit who receives United States citizenship at birth. The complaint continued. So this is one of Trump's executive orders that was signed, already facing some major legal challenges. We'll keep a very close eye on that right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Turning our attention to the weather this morning, winter weather affecting the central and eastern parts of North Carolina on this Wednesday morning. And with that, the North Carolina governor and emergency management officials were asking residents and continue to ask residents to stay off the road in areas where some heavy snowfall has taken place. Really focusing on the southeastern coast and inland counties and near the Wilmington and Outer Banks area. That's where some 3 to 5 inches of snow has fallen overnight. Governor Josh Stein said yesterday, quote, "Tonight and tomorrow morning we are concerned with unsafe road conditions. As you get east of 95, we're anticipating more snow, and to the west, less snow. It's counterintuitive from what we traditionally have seen when it comes to winter weather. Emergency Management Director Will Ray said and asked those impacted by the storms to stay off the road, quote, for your safety and for the safety of our first responders and DOT personnel that may be out. The cold front that is blanketed portions of the state caused major snow issues earlier in the western half of the country, with snow falling in places like Houston, Texas, New Orleans. Some areas they're seeing over a foot of snow, blizzard warnings through portions of southern Louisiana, which have never been seen before. And with that, here, the state's emergency response team has been activated to monitor the storm's approach, with 24-hour emergency centers open. The North Carolina Department of Transportation, according to the emergency management officials, has the manpower in place, and the components of the National Guard have been deployed to the eastern half of the state for emergency response needs. With that, they have 4x4 driving capabilities, and the NCDOT team has been placed in various hot spots in the eastern half of the state for road clearance, which I suspect will begin over the next couple of hours in the eastern half of the state. The agency has positioned around 800 employees in eastern North Carolina to pre-treat roads, and that took place over the last couple of days with over 1.7 million gallons of brine. This includes 55,000 gallons across the Wilmington metro area, where Josh Stein focused his comments yesterday. Ray said that slick roadway conditions are possible and that the DOT is going to start on those more major thoroughfares first before they head into some of the side streets and the neighborhoods. However, unlike snow that we saw in the state back just a couple of weeks ago, which was primarily centered between Charlotte and Raleigh, the temperatures are blistering cold across North Carolina this morning. So not only do you have snow falling in the central and eastern, really east of 95, however, these blistering cold temperatures mean that not only is that snow not going to go anywhere anytime soon, however, you're going to have potential for things like black ice and other sorts of icing to take place on the roadways as daybreak happens and as some of these roads begin to clear. Governor Josh Stein and emergency management officials urging individuals to just stay home if you've seen some major snowfall, 3 to 5 inches east of 95. We'll keep an eye on that throughout the morning and pass any additional details as we get them right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's now 5:12, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We will get a look at traffic this morning. Some light snowfall in Charlotte. We'll get an update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks.
It's 5:19. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. Good morning to you. We are now tracking some news out of Washington, D.C. as Senator Thom Tillis has led Republican colleagues in introducing the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, or better known as Senate Bill 6. The bill would ensure that newborns surviving abortions would receive care from healthcare providers. In a press release, Tillis said ensuring that newborn babies receive medical care, regardless of the circumstances, should not be a divisive issue. It is unconscionable that there are situations where healthcare professionals might not make every effort to save a life when the need arises. This common sense legislation is crucial for protecting the lives of newborns, and I am committed to fighting for the life and well-being of babies who survive abortions. In 2002, the Born Alive Infants Protection Act was enacted, legally recognizing a newborn as a person from the moment of birth if any signs of life are present, regardless of the circumstances. However, the law does not mandate protections for these infants, leaving a gap that permits the practice of withholding care from infants who survive an abortion. Senate Bill 6 addresses these issues by establishing clear standards for care, as well as hospital transfer protocols, mandatory reporting requirements, legal recourse for mothers, and responsible criminal penalties for healthcare professionals who fail to comply with the law. The part of the law reads, quote, if an abortion results in the live birth of an infant, the infant is a legal person for all purposes under the law of the United States and entitled to all protections of such law. Any infant born alive after an abortion or within a hospital, clinic, or other facility has the same claim to the protections of the law that would arise for any newborn or for any person who comes to a hospital, clinic, or other facility for screening and treatment or otherwise becomes a patient within its care. This is not the first time a congressional bill of this nature has been introduced. In 2023, now Senate Leader John Thune introduced a similar bill, but it was never voted on, and Representative Annie Wager of Missouri also introduced a companion bill in the House at that time. A similar state-level bill did pass the North Carolina General Assembly in 2019. That was Senate Bill 359, but it was vetoed by Governor Roy Cooper, and an override vote in the North Carolina House failed. The North Carolina Senate passed it again in 2021. That was Senate Bill 405. However, it was not taken up by the House. You can read that entire legislation, which is just a couple of pages long, including all of the senators that have signed on to this, including U.S. Senator Thom Tillis, by visiting our website this morning at carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:22. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. We continue to track legislation out of the 119th Congress as we watched Inauguration Day earlier this week. Obviously, the House and Senate sworn in a couple of weeks ago. And we do have some new legislation coming out of a freshman congressman here in North Carolina. To get some additional details on that this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Katie Zender from CarolinaJournal.com to the News Hour this morning. Katie, Pat Harrigan, Congressman Harrigan, is introducing some new legislation. You're tracking that this morning. What are those details looking like?
Hi, good morning, Nick. Yes, so freshman Congressman Pat Harrigan, who represents North Carolina's 10th Congressional District, who was elected to fill former Representative Patrick McHenry's seat, has introduced his first bill in Congress called the Americans Act. So he is wasting no time getting right to work. He's been very vocal on a lot of the legislation that has come out of Congress so far, putting out statements on a lot of different pieces that have not been sponsored by him, but he's been very vocal in his support of. But his act is called the Americans Act, and this legislation would reinstate more than 8,400 service members who refused the COVID vaccine after Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin announced this requirement in August of 2021 under the Biden administration. Now, this order was actually rescinded back in January of 2023, but what this piece of legislation would do, this is H.R. 511, it would reinstate the wrongfully discharged service members, clear their records, restore their benefits. I believe it would also give them back pay, so they would get all the pay that they missed from being discharged. And then it would also ensure that future administrations cannot, weaponize similar mandates against the armed forces. Harrigan put out a quote on this. He said, "This mandate wasn't about science or readiness. It was about control. Thousands of patriots were cast aside by the very nation they swore to defend, stripped of their careers, benefits, and their dignity, not because they failed to serve honorably, but because of political overreach." And then he goes on. You can read the rest of the quote in the article. But basically what this bill would do, according to the legislation, this quote from the legislation says, "The Secretary of Defense may not issue any COVID-19 vaccine mandate as a replacement for the mandate rescinded under Section 525 of the James F. National Defense Authorization Act from fiscal year 2023. And then it goes on to say the Secretary of Defense may not take any adverse action against a covered member based solely on refusal of such a member to receive a vaccine for COVID-19. So all of these members of the armed forces that were dismissed, didn't receive benefits, have their records marred, all of these things, they're going to be getting repaid for that. They're going to be getting their jobs back if this bill is passed into law. What's interesting to note about this, Nick, is that one of the executive orders that Trump signed just yesterday, and we noted this in a Carolina Journal article that's up on the website as well, but one of those executive orders would do the same thing. So it would reinstate these more than 8,400 service members that were fired because of the fact that they refused to take the COVID vaccine, and they would also be getting all of that back pay as well. So that was one of the executive orders that he signed yesterday. That's in an article that went up on the inauguration, and then there's a tweet reference from Representative Hudson, I believe it is. But so yeah, Harrigan is not wasting any time. He's getting right to work. Pat Harrigan is a combat decorated Green Beret and a United States Military Academy graduate, so he is more than qualified to kind of speak on these issues.
It's one thing, and it's interesting here, we now have this kind of being tackled from two different angles. You, of course, had, as you just were highlighting and recapping, Congressman Harrigan's bill last week, and then Trump's executive order on Monday. However, one of the issues with an executive order, and we even saw this with Trump, is they can easily be revoked with the stroke of a pen. And it sounds like, Katie, through this legislation, if this is to now move forward not only in the House, but then the Senate, and then get to Trump's desk, is it may not allow something like this to happen again in the future versus an executive order where a new administration could at any point just revoke some of those changes with the stroke of a pen.
Right, exactly. And that's very important to note, Nick, is, in 4 years when we elect a new president, whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, or, it doesn't really matter. If they decide, I want to revoke this, then they can easily, with another executive order, just undo all that. And we can just keep going back and forth if we really wanted to. And I'm glad you brought up the Senate bill as well. So yes, Senator Ted Cruz from Texas is also sponsoring a companion bill in the Senate. He also put out a quote on this. He said, "Our military is still dealing with the consequences of the Biden administration's wrongful COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Even though I led the successful charge for Congress to repeal the mandate, there is still more to be done." Then he continues to go on. Another thing that Harrigan has, not really done, but he's been appointed to serve on 3 committees: the House Armed Services Subcommittee, the Subcommittee on Military Personnel, and the Subcommittee on Intelligence and Special Operations. Again, these are, military kind of focused committees. So he's more than qualified to serve on these committees with his background and his experience. He said in a tweet, "I'm honored to be appointed to the Republican subcommittees on readiness, military personnel, and intelligence and special operations. I'm committed to ensuring our military is unmatched, capable of deterring threats, and ready to win wars if necessary."
Well, it's obvious that his colleagues in the House appreciate his experience and insight. It's a great update this morning, Katie. You can read more on her story by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:28, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time for another look at traffic on this Wednesday morning with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey,
It's now 5:35. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We are also streaming live this morning on our Carolina Journal YouTube channel. If you miss any portion of the show, you can check out our podcast. It's available wherever you get your shows. Just search for the Carolina Journal News Hour. Tap the subscribe or follow button, and you'll get a new show delivered to your smartphone or tablet each and every weekday morning. It's the Carolina Journal News Hour podcast. Download and subscribe now. Jeff Jackson, who is the new attorney general here in North Carolina, has joined Democrats in 17 other states, as well as the District of Columbia, in a new federal lawsuit challenging President Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. The suit filed in Massachusetts federal court also has support from the San Francisco city attorney, and there is a separate suit including the states of Arizona, Illinois, Oregon, and Washington that brings that total number of states challenging this new executive order to 22. According to the lawsuit, it says, quote, plaintiffs bring this action to protect their states, localities, and residents from the president's flagrantly unlawful attempt to strip hundreds of thousands of American-born children of their citizenship based on their parentage. Laura Howard, who's Jackson's chief deputy attorney general, is one of the lawyers listed in the suits, and the other states that Jeff Jackson has signed on with include California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin. And then, of course, some of those other states in that additional suit. With that, Jackson's office says, quote, the principle of birthright citizenship has been enshrined in the Constitution for more than 150 years. The citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment unambiguously and expressly confers citizenship on all persons born in and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. More than 125 years ago, the Supreme Court confirmed that this entitles a child born in the United States to non-citizen parents automatic citizenship. The lawsuit goes on to say Congress subsequently codified that understanding in the Immigration and National Security Act, and the executive branch has long recognized that any attempt to deny citizenship to children based on their parents' citizenship or immigration status would be, quote, unquestionably unconstitutional. They claim that President Trump now seeks to do just that. So Jeff Jackson in that office as the Attorney General, a Democrat, signing on with 17 other states already going after Trump's executive orders. This coming out less than one day after he even signed the action in the Oval Office late in the night on Monday. You can read more details over on our website this morning at carolinajournal.com. It's now 5:38. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. We are tracking details this morning on a shooting that happened back on New Year's Eve that has a political connection here in North Carolina. To get some additional details on that this morning, it's my pleasure to welcome Brianna Kramer, carolinajournal.com, back to the News Hour this morning. Brianna, we go back a couple of weeks on this story to New Year's Eve. What are the latest details that you're tracking?
Yes. Hey, Nick. Questions are still lingering around the mysterious shooting of Krishana Polite. She's a former top aide to Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, and she was struck by a stray bullet in a parking lot while she was at a New Year's Eve church service just a couple weeks ago, and police are continuing to investigate how that bullet ended up in her neck. She ended up going to the hospital that night, and to this day, the bullet remains in her neck. And it's just a really interesting conversation because it's also related to somebody who was the chief of staff to the former lieutenant governor here in North Carolina.
Well, that leads me down a couple of roads. First of all, where did this shooting happen? And as of right now, obviously Mark Robinson is a very controversial figure. Is there any idea that there was any sort of political motivation or targeted attack behind this?
Well, we don't think there's actually any indication of that, or at least that's what police are saying. Although Krishana Polite herself has expressed a little skepticism as to what was the root cause of this, who was it. To give you a little bit more backstory, she was at a New Year's Eve service at St. Peter's Church and World Outreach Center in Winston-Salem. And so there was a crowd leaving the church, scattered into the parking lot, and they heard firecrackers and they could see sparks off in the distance. And of course, this was a celebration night everywhere across the country for New Year's. And so that was kind of an indication that maybe a stray bullet came from a celebratory gunshot. At least that's kind of the indication that was described. And Polite, or Krishana Polite, she walked to her vehicle with the crowd, and that's when she was struck by a bullet. And this is all described on her GoFundMe page as well. But bystanders were there to help control the bleeding before EMS arrived at the church parking lot, and they transported her to the hospital. But now it's been 2 weeks, and she still doesn't have really any answers as to what exactly went on. And so that's where she just kind of remains skeptical and concerned about the lack of answers that she's getting.
Did you have an opportunity to reach out to local law enforcement in the Winston-Salem area, and did you hear anything back as a result of that?
Yeah, so I was able to reach out to the Winston-Salem Police Department, and they did release a press release last week. They also posted a video to their Facebook page, but they don't have any specific update. But they did communicate that they are talking with the family. It's an ongoing investigation right now. But Krishana herself, I had the chance to speak with her last week, and she told me that the officer stopped by her house last Thursday. That was the first time that she met the officer. And they gave her some information and said that they do have a lead, but they really didn't give her any more details than that. And so I asked her, do you feel safe? Because you're not sure if this was just a stray random bullet, or if maybe this had a deeper connection with maybe her role in politics. And she ended up telling me no, that she doesn't feel safe right now because she doesn't have answers, and law enforcement has yet to reveal any information as to what happened. She says it's very strange that, she was in this parking lot with a lot of other people and she was the only person shot. I'll read you one of her quotes. She says, "I find that to be odd. I find it to be odd that the officer said that there was no gun casings in the parking lot at all, but I was the only one injured. I find that odd."
Yeah, and it's obviously a tough issue for law enforcement to straddle when you've got these ongoing investigations. You can't really talk to the press. There's only so much information that you can give out to even the individuals affected, because you don't want to potentially jeopardize the investigation or a future court case. So obviously, Brianna, in this case, it's very frustrating for obviously herself and for the rest of the public here in North Carolina looking for answers. But unfortunately, this is what we've come to learn with law enforcement investigations, and it's not even really anything unique in North Carolina. This is kind of the standard trend across the country when you have these ongoing investigations.
Definitely. And that can, of course, be so frustrating and difficult for her to be dealing with right now, and for the public and her community. But at the same time, of course, it is, as you said, a law enforcement investigation, and hopefully that they can bring some answers and some peace of mind to her in the coming days or weeks as they continue with this investigation, and we can keep the public updated at Carolina Journal.
Absolutely. You can check out some of those additional quotes and some of the updates on this story by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. Brianna Kramer joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's now 5:44. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Some winter weather may be affecting your commute in this morning. Let's get an update on the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thank you.
Good morning again. It's 5:51. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. Well, we are keeping an eye this morning on the race for North Carolina Supreme Court, the battle between Justice Allison Riggs and Jefferson Griffin, as that race has been under contest since Election Day back in the early parts of November. Our update this morning takes us to Justice Allison Riggs and asking her colleagues on the court of which she currently serves to schedule oral arguments as early as possible in her election dispute with her opponent. Riggs' request would place the election case in front of the disputes of the highest court and is scheduled to consider this case starting around February the 11th. Riggs would not sit on the bench during oral arguments or take place in the discussion about the case that is affecting her court seat. The Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals has scheduled oral arguments for January the 27th in the same case, and the state Supreme Court has scheduled no arguments. It has set a Friday deadline for last written briefs in the case. That's Friday of this week. Riggs cites three reasons in her court filing yesterday for scheduling state oral argument. She says during this preparatory setting, which means that the case would move in front of already other scheduled cases for oral arguments as early as parts of next month. Her lawyers wrote, quote, for this case is unusual in that this court and the Fourth Circuit are executing and exercising simultaneous jurisdiction while expediting their respective proceedings. As of now, the Fourth Circuit cannot know when or whether this court intends to hold oral arguments. By scheduling that argument now, this court will minimize the risk of miscommunication between the parties and the courts. And by holding oral arguments, this court will ensure that it has the most up-to-date information on to which it makes its decision. Second, this case is also unusual because it involves a dispute between two sitting judges who ran against each other in a partisan election. As you're well aware, Riggs, a Democrat, is an appointed incumbent currently sitting on the state's highest court, while Griffin, a Republican, is a sitting state court appeals judge. Riggs currently leads Griffin by 734 votes in the election that has still yet, and at least it doesn't appear anytime soon, to be certified. Griffin has challenged more than 60,000 ballots cast in the election, and court filings suggest that Griffin believes throwing out some of those ballots could potentially swing the election in his favor. Just a little backstory in history. The state Supreme Court voted 4-2 to grant Griffin a stay back on January the 7th. That stay blocked the State Board of Elections from moving forward with their plans to certify Riggs as the winner just a couple of days later. So there is still a lot of questions. There's still a lot very much up in the air about this case itself. As of right now, again, there are these two legal proceedings that are taking place, the state's highest court and the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and we continue to track those details. We are expecting some additional updates by Friday, so we'll bring those to you either Friday morning or Monday morning, depending on when they come in, right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. You can read more and additional details about this story this morning. It's our top story over at carolinajournal.com. With some winter weather affecting portions of North Carolina, Duke Energy is pleading with customers to moderate their thermostats as winter storms and frigid temperatures could potentially strain the power grid. Duke Energy put out a post on X saying, quote, reduce your thermostat to the lowest comfort setting possible. The closer you match your thermostat to the outdoor temperature, the more you can save. The average high for temperatures Wednesday are expected to be below freezing across literally the entire state of North Carolina. In a press release on Monday, the Charlotte-based energy company, which provides power to millions across the Tar Heel state, warned of extremely cold temperatures to come and shared tips to save energy and money by moderating their energy use for, in this case, what we're talking about essentially is heating your home. They go through the process of reducing your thermostat, checking your air filters, and regular maintenance on your heating system, leaving drapes and blinds open on the sunny side of your home to allow the sun to provide some thermal heat, seal cracks in windows, doors, and vents with caulking or other sorts of weather stripping to save on heating cost, as well as they claim replacing your standard light bulbs with LEDs. Now, obviously, this is a relevant issue because back in around Christmas of 2022, a cold snap overnight on Christmas Eve overloaded Duke's electrical grid and caused widespread black and brownouts across customers. And they said at the time, quote, "Due to extreme cold weather causing increased demand and a shortage of available power in the southeast region, meaning the company, was forced to interrupt service to some 500,000 customers to maintain the energy to grid and prevent any further disruptions." Now, Duke Energy says that they are not expecting that to take place with some of these frigid temperatures that are impacting the state today. However, they do continue to provide those tips over on their website as winter weather continues to affect North Carolina. Well, that's going to do it for a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We are back tomorrow morning at 5 to 6 a.m. right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.